Hi, everybody, and welcome to week 12. We're moving into the final stretch of the trimester, and we're also moving into a short week. This is Thanksgiving week, so happy Thanksgiving, and I hope that you all are able to get a little bit of a break. I've tried to do the assignments for this week so that you don't have too much to do and you can relax a little bit. And before we get into the assignments, though, let's just talk about where we are in the trimester. I know that a number of you have struggled a lot this trimester, like a lot of people. The pandemic has been hard on everybody, and I know that some of you haven't completed the research paper, and I am happy to work with you to get that done. Please keep in mind in this class, there are no late penalties. Any one of you can pass the class. You can go back and do work that didn't get done. If you're unhappy about a grade or something, you can redo it. So anything goes as far as getting your work done. The only criteria here is that you do need to have late work done by week 14. So you've got a couple weeks, and please talk to me, and we'll work out a schedule. We'll work this out. You can do this, and everybody can pass the class. So let's take a look at the assignments for this week. So this week we began the last and final writing project, which is going to be a short one. You're going to be doing a 2 to 3 page paper, and it's going to be a compare-contrast paper. In a compare-contrast paper, as you know from your reading last week, you are looking at similarities and differences among two things. You are finding specific points of comparison whereby you compare and contrast each thing based on these points. And this week you're going to be looking at some aspect of Hmong history compared to some aspect of your own history. And I'm going to suggest that you focus on your arrival stories, the story of your family, your ancestors arriving, and the story of the Hmong people arriving in the United States. And that is a huge topic. And of course, you're going to have to narrow it very significantly in order to be able to address it in 2 to 3 pages with detail. So to get started on this, there are 3 videos to watch, and one is called The Danger of a Single Story. And this is probably the best TED video that, in my opinion, that's ever been produced. It really says a lot about stereotyping and avoiding stereotyping, and I think you'll find it just a really interesting video to watch too. She's humorous, she's wise, and she has a lot to say about how we go about viewing people other than ourselves. And we're starting with that because as we compare cultures, one of the things that we don't want to do is overgeneralize and assume that all people within this culture are the same or have had the same experiences. Not true at all. Now, at the same time, there are some similarities that we can find between the experiences of one culture and another, and that's what you'll be looking at in the paper. But this is a little bit of a warning to beware that not everybody's experience is going to be the same. Then you're going to watch a video called Witness to a Secret War. And again, I think this is a really interesting video. It talks about the Hmong experience during the Vietnam War and what led the Hmong to the United States. And then finally, you are going to watch a video called The Power of Sharing Our Stories. And this is a video done by a Hmong refugee in which she tells her family's personal story. So 3, I think, very enjoyable videos to watch. And then there's some optional reading here if you want to read this. You don't have to, but I think it's all other interesting stuff. Then you're going to do a discussion post. And what you're going to do here is answer these 4 questions. So that's about 4 paragraphs. And the first one says, briefly summarize what you knew about Hmong history and culture before you read any of these videos. And notice it says briefly summarize. So we're talking about a paragraph there. And share also in this paragraph why you thought that the Hmong were living here in Wisconsin. Then the second question is to explain how you learned these things. And one of the points of this assignment is for us to think about where we get our information from. It's not necessarily from lived experience. Often our information comes from sources that we don't really think about. And unless we really start thinking about them, how do we know if we're right or if we're getting the full story? Then summarize some new things that you've learned about Hmong history and culture after viewing the material from this week. And finally, think about the impact of a human story as opposed to an encyclopedia entry. If you wanted to learn the history of Hmong arrival in the United States, you could go to an encyclopedia. But instead, what you've heard this week are people's individual stories. And I'm just going to ask you to reflect a little bit about, does that matter? Does it change the way that you view things or change the way that you feel afterwards? What does a story do in terms of conveying information? And this is a top-down discussion, meaning that you won't see the posts of others until you've posted yourself. So focus on those 4 paragraphs, and I think the discussion post will be about 4 paragraphs long, and then post that to the discussion board. And then finally, we get into preparing for the paper. Now, your paper instructions are summarized here. And as I've already said, you're going to be comparing 2 aspects of arrival stories in the United States, the Hmong story and the story of your family. Now, maybe you don't even know where you came from or what your ancestry is, and that's fine. If you don't, you can just pick a group of people. Maybe you want to talk about Hmong arrivals versus the arrivals of Irish immigrants or Norwegian immigrants, or perhaps you're Native American and you want to compare your own early history with that of the Hmong. Or perhaps you're Hmong, and in which case you are going to need to compare your own histories to some other group that you select. So you're comparing 2 groups of people. And here are some questions to start perhaps narrowing down your paper. You might want to just write down some questions as you brainstorm, questions that you know the answers to or questions that you want to find the answers to. And here are some of these questions. So why did people come here to the United States? What kind of reception did they get when they came here? Were they welcomed? Were they discriminated against? What were their experiences after coming? Did they live in poverty? Did they become relatively successful, relatively fast? Those types of things, as you write about them and as you write about what you know about your family's history, may lead you to decide on what small slice of this assignment you want to focus on for your topic. You're not going to be able to address all 3 of those questions in one paper, I don't think. Maybe you can, but I think that you might want to just focus on one. Now, as far as research goes, you can, I'm asking you to use 3 sources in this paper, and as far as the Hmong sources, you can use the sources presented in this week's assignment. So that research is done. I mean, you can use those sources. And as far as another source, I would recommend Credo Reference because it is a good encyclopedic type of history. You can also consider using a family member if you want to interview your grandmother or your grandfather. That's a legitimate source too. So those are the assignments for the week. And then there is here a little summary of what's going to happen in the next couple weeks, and that's right here. And I advise you to look at that and use this week to catch up if you need to. Get in contact with me. I'm happy to talk with you Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever. And we will get through the end of the trimester in a good way.